When Evan Brooks woke on his own torn couch at dawn, he knew something had gone terribly wrong. His shirt was missing. His kitchen smelled like expensive perfume. And standing by his coffee maker, wearing nothing but his flannel and an unsettling smile, was a woman he'd never seen before. A woman whose eyes held the kind of dangerous confidence that came from owning boardrooms and crushing careers. "You really don't remember last night?" she asked, her voice smooth as silk and sharp as glass. In that moment, Evan realized his quiet, careful life as a single father had just been shattered, and he had no idea why. If you want to know how a single act of kindness turned into the most dangerous and life-changing night of Evan's life, stay until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Evan Brooks had learned long ago that life didn't give second chances to men like him. At 34, he'd already buried one dream, raised a 6-year-old daughter mostly alone, and built a small, dignified existence from the rubble of what used to be. He worked as a handyman and occasional contractor, taking whatever jobs kept the lights on and Emma's school supplies paid for. The work was honest, the hours were brutal, but it was his, and that mattered. Thursday started like any other. Emma bounced into his bedroom at 6:15, blonde curls wild, her Gap Kids pajamas already stained with whatever breakfast experiment she'd attempted without supervision. "Daddy, I made toast," she announced proudly, holding up something that resembled charcoal more than bread. Evan groaned, pushing himself upright. His back protested, a reminder of yesterday's crawl space repair job. "Em, we talked about using the toaster alone. But I'm 6 now. That's basically grown up." He caught her mid-bounce and pulled her into a hug, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and burnt bread. "You're basically trouble is what you are," she giggled, squirming free. "Mrs. Chen says I'm spirited." "Mrs. Chen is being polite." He ruffled her hair. "Get dressed. School in 30 minutes. Can we get pancakes on the way?" "We have cereal." "Cereal is sad, Daddy." "Cereal is affordable, baby girl. Now go." She ran off, leaving him staring at the water stain spreading across his bedroom ceiling. The leak had gotten worse. Again. He added it to the mental list of repairs he couldn't afford to hire out and didn't have time to fix himself. The morning unfolded in its usual controlled chaos. Emma chattered through breakfast about her best friend Sophie's upcoming birthday party, about the class hamster who'd escaped again, about everything and nothing with the breathless enthusiasm only 6-year-olds possessed. Evan listened, nodded, braided her hair into something approximating neat, and got her to Lincoln Elementary with 2 minutes to spare. "Love you, Daddy," she called, already running toward the playground. "Love you more, Em." He watched until she disappeared into the crowd of children, then checked his phone. 3 new messages. One from his regular client asking about a bathroom renovation quote. One from his ex-wife's lawyer, he deleted that without reading. And one from Tommy Rodriguez, his oldest friend and occasional work partner. "Storm's coming in bad tonight. Like, really bad." "You batting it down?" Evan glanced at the sky. Clouds were gathering, dark and heavy, but nothing unusual for late September in Pennsylvania. "They got storms. They got through storms." "I'm good," he texted back. "Got that porch repair in Millbrook at 10. Should be done before it hits." Famous last words, brother. The porch repair took longer than expected. Mrs. Hendricks, 83 and sharp as a tack, had opinions about every nail Evan hammered and insisted on telling him, in extensive detail, about her grandson's new job in Pittsburgh. By the time he finished, cleaned up, and loaded his truck, it was past 3, and the sky had turned the color of old bruises. His phone buzzed. Emma's school. "Mr. Brooks? It's Principal Morrison. Just wanted to confirm Emma's grandmother is picking her up today, correct?" Evan's chest tightened. "My mother's picking her up, yes. Is there a problem?" "No problem at all. We're just being extra careful with the weather advisory. Some parents are collecting early." "I appreciate the call. She'll be fine with my mom until I get home." He'd already arranged it that morning. His mother, Janet, lived 20 minutes away and helped with Emma whenever Evan's schedule got complicated, which was often. She'd pick Emma up, give her dinner, probably spoil her with too much TV time, and have her back home by 8. It was a system that worked. The rain started as he merged onto Route 22, heading back toward town. Not heavy yet, just persistent, the kind that promised worse to come. Traffic thickened. Everyone had the same idea: get home, get safe, get settled before the real storm hit. Evan was passing the exit for Riverside Drive when he saw the smoke. Black, thick, rising from somewhere off the highway beyond the tree line. His hands tightened on the wheel. Probably nothing. Probably someone's trash fire gotten out of hand. Probably not his problem. But the smoke was wrong. Too much, too fast, and the wind was pushing it sideways in a way that suggested something big was burning. He took the exit. The access road was half flooded already, water rushing across the asphalt in sheets. His truck handled it fine, barely, but he could see why most people had turned back. This area was prone to flooding. The creek that ran parallel to Riverside Drive had a history of jumping its banks during heavy rain. Most of the properties here were set back, elevated, built by people who understood the risks. The burning car was not elevated. Evans saw it as he rounded the curve. A sleek black Mercedes, nose down in the swollen creek, water already halfway up the doors, flames licking from beneath the crushed hood. The driver's side was pinned against a tree. The passenger side faced the road, window shattered, smoke pouring out. No one else had stopped. No one else was here. He slammed on the brakes. "Damn it," he muttered, throwing the truck into park. He grabbed his phone, dialed 911 as he jumped out into the rain. 911, what's your emergency? Car accident, Riverside Drive access road, half-mile past the Route 22 exit. Vehicles on fire, partially submerged. I think someone's inside. Sir, emergency services are delayed due to severe weather. I know, I'm going in. What? He hung up, dropping the phone on his seat, and ran. The water hit him like a punch, cold, fast, deeper than it looked. The creek was nearly a river now, pulling at his legs, trying to drag him downstream. He fought it, pushing forward, the heat from the burning car suddenly intense even through the rain. "Hello?" he shouted. "Anyone in there?" A hand appeared in the broken passenger window, pale, shaking, but moving. Evan lunged for it. The woman inside was conscious but fading fast. Blood streaked her face from a gash above her eyebrow, her eyes striking, even through the smoke and pain, fixed on him with desperate clarity. "Can't move," she gasped. Legs trapped. The water was rising. The fire was spreading. Evan didn't waste time with reassurances. "I'm getting you out," he said, and meant it. He braced against the car, ignoring the heat searing his palms through the wet metal, and reached through the window. She was wedged tight, the dashboard crushed inward, pinning her left leg. He couldn't see how bad the damage was. Didn't matter. "What's your name?" he asked, working his hands down along her shoulders, trying to find leverage. "Madeline," she managed. "Okay, Madeline, I'm Evan. This is going to hurt. Everything already hurts. It's about to hurt worse. On 3. 1. He didn't wait for 3. He pulled hard and fast, feeling something give way, hearing her scream tear through the sound of fire and rain. She came free in a rush, dead weight in his arms, and he staggered backward into the water. The current caught them both. For a terrifying moment, they were spinning, sinking, the water over his head and Madeline's weight pulling them down. Evan kicked hard, broke the surface, gasped for air, and kicked again. His feet found purchase on rocks, on mud, on something solid enough to push against. He dragged them both toward the bank, muscles screaming, lungs burning, every instinct screaming at him to let go, to save himself. He didn't let go. They hit the mud at the creek's edge, and Evan hauled them up onto solid ground, collapsing onto his back, with Madeline sprawled across his chest, both of them heaving, soaked, alive. Behind them, the Mercedes exploded. The shockwave rolled over them like thunder, heat and light, and the smell of burning rubber and gasoline. Evan threw his arm over Madeline's head, shielding her from the debris raining down, and waited for the world to stop trying to kill them. When the air finally cleared enough to breathe, he looked down. Madeline's eyes were closed. Her face was pale, but her chest was moving. "Hey," he said, his voice rough. "Madeline, stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open. "You're insane." "You're welcome." She tried to laugh, winced and settled for breathing. My leg. Don't look at it. Just keep breathing. Help's coming. It wasn't, not quickly, but he said it anyway because that's what you did. You lied when the truth was too heavy. He pulled off his jacket, soaked through but better than nothing, and wrapped it around her shoulders. She was shivering violently now, shock setting in. He needed to keep her warm, keep her talking, keep her conscious until the ambulance arrived. Tell me about yourself, he said. You from around here? Pittsburgh, she whispered. Meeting canceled. Was driving home. Long drive in this weather. I've driven in worse. Not anymore, you haven't. From now on, you're hiring a driver. She made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Always have a driver. Gave him the night off. Evan paused. You have a driver. Had fired him 3 weeks ago. Haven't replaced. She trailed off, her breathing getting shallow. Madeline. Hey. Eyes on me. She focused on him with effort. Her pupils were uneven. Concussion, definitely. Possible internal injuries. He needed that ambulance now. What do you do? He asked, keeping his voice steady. For work. I run a company. What kind of company? Big one. Despite everything, he smiled. Helpful. Cross Enterprises. You've probably never heard of it. He had. Everyone in Pennsylvania had heard of Cross Enterprises. They owned half the commercial real estate from Philadelphia to Erie, had fingers in manufacturing, tech development, and about a dozen other industries Evan couldn't name. They were the kind of company that made news when they acquired competitors and destroyed careers with quarterly earnings reports. Which meant the woman bleeding out in his arms wasn't just wealthy. She was powerful in a way Evan couldn't begin to comprehend. I've heard of it, he said carefully. Then you know, I'm supposed to be untouchable. Her eyes found his, suddenly sharp despite the pain. But here I am, touched. Yeah, well, fires don't care about your stock portfolio. Neither do you. Lady, I don't even know you. Exactly. She breathed out slowly. That's refreshing. Sirens finally cut through the rain, distant, but getting closer. Evan felt something unclench in his chest. She was going to make it. Probably. Maybe. What's your name? Madeline asked suddenly. I told you, Evan. Evan what? Brooks. Evan Brooks. She tested it like she was filing it away somewhere permanent. I'm going to remember that. You're going to have a hell of a concussion. You're not going to remember anything. I'll remember you. The ambulance appeared around the bend, lights flashing, cutting through the storm. Paramedics spilled out, professional and efficient, taking over with practiced hands. They loaded Madeline onto a stretcher, firing questions at Evan he answered automatically. How long? What happened? Was she conscious the whole time? Sir, you should come to the hospital too, one of them said, eyeing the burns on Evan's hands. Get checked out. I'm fine. Sir, I said I'm fine. Take care of her. They didn't argue. They had bigger problems. They loaded Madeline into the back, slammed the doors, and pulled away, sirens wailing into the storm. Evan stood in the rain, watching the taillights disappear, and realized he was shaking. Adrenaline crash. He knew the feeling. He'd been here before, years ago, when Emma's mother had walked out and he'd been left holding a screaming infant and a mortgage he couldn't afford. That same hollow, unsteady feeling of having survived something he didn't fully understand. His truck was where he'd left it. His phone was ringing. Evan? Jesus, where are you? Tommy's voice was tight. Your mom called. Emma's asking for you. I'm on my way. Tell her I'm on my way. He drove home through flooded streets and falling branches, his hands numb on the wheel, his mind replaying the moment Madeline's hand appeared in that window. He'd made a choice in that instant. He'd chosen to stop, to help, to risk. He didn't regret it. But he also didn't realize that choice had just changed everything. By the time Evan got home, it was past 9. The storm had settled into a steady, brutal downpour that turned the streets into rivers and the sky into solid black. His mother's car was still in his driveway, a good sign. Emma was safe. He let himself in quietly, dripping onto the entryway floor, and found them both on the couch. Emma was asleep, curled under her favorite blanket, her face peaceful in a way that made his chest ache. His mother looked up from her book, her expression shifting from relief to alarm as she took him in. "Evan, good Lord, what happened?" "Car accident, I'm fine." "You're soaked, you're bleeding, that is not fine." He glanced down. His hands were blistered, raw, the burns worse than he'd realized. "I'll clean up. Thanks for staying with her." Janet stood, moving with the brisk efficiency that had gotten her through raising 3 boys mostly alone after Evan's father left. "Sit. I'll get the first aid kit." "Mom." "Sit, Evan." He sat. She returned with supplies and worked in silence, cleaning the burns, wrapping his hands in gauze with the same careful precision she'd used when he was 10 and came home with scraped knees. When she finished, she looked at him with eyes that saw too much. "You pulled someone out of a burning car." It wasn't a question. "Yeah." "You could have died." "I didn't." "You have a daughter, Evan." "I know, Mom. Believe me, I know." He flexed his bandaged hands, wincing. "But someone needed help. What was I supposed to do? Drive past?" Janet's expression softened. "No, you weren't. Because you're your father's son, too damn stubborn and too damn decent for your own good." She cupped his face, briefly, the way she had when he was small. "Just promise me you'll be careful." "I promise." Liar. But she smiled, sad and proud all at once. "I'll take Emma up to bed." "I've got her." "You can barely move your hands." "I've got her, Mom." He carried Emma upstairs, her weight familiar and grounding, and tucked her into bed. She stirred, blinking up at him sleepily. "Daddy?" "Right here, baby girl." "You smell like smoke." "I know. Go back to sleep." "Love you." "Love you more." She was out again before he finished speaking. He stood there watching her breathe, feeling the adrenaline finally drain away into exhaustion. Tomorrow he'd tell her a sanitized version of tonight. Tomorrow he'd make it sound less terrifying. Tomorrow he'd pretend he hadn't almost died. Tonight, he just needed to sleep. He made it to the living room couch, his bed, since Emma had the only bedroom, and collapsed. His mother had left, locking the door behind her. The rain hammered the roof. His hands throbbed, his body ached, and somewhere in Pittsburgh, a woman named Madeline Cross was in a hospital bed, alive because he'd made a choice. It should have ended there. It didn't. Evan woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. He opened his eyes, confused. He hadn't made coffee. He was alone. Emma was at school. He'd gotten her there somehow this morning, the details fuzzy with exhaustion. His mother had come by, he thought. Maybe. Everything felt distant, wrapped in cotton. The smell of coffee was not distant. He sat up slowly, and his stomach dropped. In his kitchen, wearing his flannel shirt and nothing else that he could see, stood a woman. She moved with easy confidence, pouring coffee into his chipped blue mug like she owned the place. Her hair was dark, slightly damp, catching the morning light. When she turned, her face was familiar in a way that made his brain stutter. Madeline Cross. She smiled. "Good morning." Evan's mouth was too dry to form words. His mind raced, tripping over itself. She was here, in his house, in his shirt, and he had absolutely no memory of how or why. He started, then stopped. "What? You really don't remember last night?" Madeline asked, leaning against his counter, the mug cradled in her hands. Her eyes held amusement and something sharper, something calculating. "That's disappointing." "Remember..." Evan stood up too fast, the room tilting. "The accident. I remember the accident, but that was... What day is it?" "Friday." "Friday." 1 day later, but she'd been... "You were in the hospital," he said, his voice rough. "You were injured." "I was. They released me last night, against medical advice technically, but I've never been good at following orders." She took a sip of coffee, watching him over the rim. "You brought me here. You insisted, actually, said I shouldn't be alone." Evan's heart hammered. I wouldn't... Relax. You were a perfect gentleman. gave me your bed, took the couch, barely said 3 words before you passed out. She set the mug down, her expression softening slightly. You saved my life, Evan. The least I could do was let you play nursemaid for a night. His hands were still bandaged. He remembered that part. Remembered coming home. Remembered Emma. Remembered... The rest was blank. I need you to leave, he said, the words coming out harsher than he intended. I have a daughter. She's at school, but she'll be home in a few hours, and I can't... I know you have Emma, 6 years old, loves strawberry shampoo, and apparently has strong opinions about breakfast. Madeline's smile turned knowing. You talk about her when you're exhausted. It's sweet. Evan felt exposed, vulnerable in a way he hadn't since his ex-wife left. How do you know? You told me last night. You were worried about her, wanted to make sure your mother got her to school okay this morning. You called twice to check. She pushed off the counter, moving closer. I answered your phone the second time. Janet seemed nice. His mother had talked to her. Perfect. He'd never hear the end of this. Why are you still here? He asked, trying to regain some control of a situation that had spiraled entirely out of his grasp. Because I wanted to thank you properly. You just did. No, I thanked you politely. She reached into a bag he hadn't noticed sitting on his kitchen table. Designer, expensive, completely out of place in his cramped apartment, and pulled out an envelope. This is thanking you properly. She held it out. Evan didn't take it. What is that? Money. A lot of it. Enough to make a difference. I don't want your money. Don't be stupid. Everyone wants money. Not from you. Not for this. Madeline's expression shifted, something like surprise flickering across her face. You pulled me out of a burning car. You could have died. The least I can do... The least you can do is leave, Evan said, his voice flat. What I did wasn't for sale. It wasn't transactional. It was human decency, and I'm not taking payment for that. The silence stretched between them, heavy with something Evan couldn't name. Madeline stared at him like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve, her confidence faltering for just a moment. Then she smiled, really smiled, not the polished corporate version, and it transformed her face into something almost vulnerable. You're serious. Completely. You're either the most principled man I've ever met, or the most foolish. Probably both. She laughed, a real sound, and tucked the envelope back into her bag. All right, Evan Brooks, no money, but I owe you, and I always pay my debts. You don't owe me anything. We'll see about that. She collected her things, shoes he hadn't noticed by the door, a jetchik draped over his one kitchen chair, and moved toward the exit with the grace of someone used to being watched. At the threshold, she paused, looking back. For what it's worth, she said quietly, you're wrong. What you did was extraordinary, and extraordinary deserves more than gratitude. It deserves nothing, Evan said. It's what anyone should do. But they don't. That's the point. She left, and the apartment felt suddenly too quiet, too small, too ordinary. Evan stood in the middle of his kitchen, staring at the spot where she'd been, and felt the weight of something he couldn't quite articulate settling over him. He'd saved her life, and somehow he had a feeling that was going to cost him more than he'd bargained for. The call came 3 days later, just as Evan was finishing a kitchen sink repair for Mrs. Patterson on Elm Street. Mr. Brooks? The voice was crisp, professional, female. This is Andrea Winters calling on behalf of Madeline Cross. Ms. Cross would like to invite you to dinner this evening at 7. A car will pick you up at your residence. Evan wedged his phone between his shoulder and ear, tightening the last connection under the sink. I appreciate the invitation, but I'll have to pass. Ms. Cross was quite insistent. I'm sure she was. The answer's still no. There was a pause, as if Andrea Winters had never encountered someone who declined Madeline Cross's invitations. May I ask why? Because I don't know her, and I have a daughter to take care of. Tell Miss Cross thank you, but no thank you. He hung up before she could respond, wiped his hands on his work rag, and crawled out from under the sink. Mrs. Patterson stood in the doorway, eyebrows raised. Was that about the woman from the news? Evan froze. What woman? The CEO. The one who was in that terrible accident on Thursday. Mrs. Patterson gestured toward her living room, where her television was always on, always tuned to local news. They've been running the story all weekend. She gave some interview about the man who saved her life. Very dramatic, very mysterious. She wouldn't say who it was. Something cold settled in Evan's stomach. When did this air? Oh, constantly. Friday night, Saturday morning, this morning during breakfast. You haven't seen it? He didn't own a television, couldn't afford cable even if he did. His phone was for calls and texts, not news updates. He'd been living in a bubble, apparently, while Madeline Cross had been broadcasting their story to anyone with a screen. I've been busy, he said, keeping his voice neutral. Sink's fixed. That'll be $80. Mrs. Patterson paid him, added an extra 10 for your trouble, and walked him to the door, still chattering about the news coverage and how romantic it all was. A mysterious hero pulling a beautiful CEO from death's door. Evan smiled, nodded, and got out as fast as he could without being rude. In his truck, he sat for a long moment, hands on the wheel, trying to process. She'd gone public. Not with his name, she'd kept that private at least, but with the story. Which meant people were talking, which meant attention, which meant complications Evan absolutely did not need in his carefully maintained, deliberately quiet life. His phone buzzed. Tommy. Dude, tell me you've seen the news. Just heard about it. I haven't seen anything. Get to a computer. Now. This is insane. I'm working, Tommy. This is more important than work, trust me. Evan sighed, started the truck, and drove to the public library. The teenage girl at the circulation desk barely looked up as he signed in for a computer. He pulled up the local news website and immediately saw it. Top story, complete with a professional photo of Madeline Cross that managed to make her look both powerful and vulnerable. The headline read, Local CEO survives fiery crash, credits unnamed hero. Evan clicked the video. Madeline appeared on screen, seated in what looked like an expensive office, her left leg in a walking boot, a small bandage near her eyebrow, the only other visible sign of the accident. She looked composed, elegant, completely in control, except for her eyes. Those were different, softer than they'd been in his kitchen. Thursday night could have been the end of my story, she said, her voice steady. I was trapped, injured, and running out of time. The water was rising, the car was on fire, and then someone stopped. The interviewer, a woman in a blue blazer, leaned forward. Can you tell us about this person? I can tell you he didn't have to stop. The conditions were dangerous. Most people turned back, but he saw someone who needed help, and he acted. Madeline paused, her gaze direct to the camera. He pulled me out. He risked his life. And when I tried to thank him with money, a substantial amount, he refused. He refused? Completely. He told me what he'd done wasn't for sale, that it was human decency. Something shifted in Madeline's expression, a crack in the professional facade. I've spent 20 years in business, making deals, negotiating everything, and I'd forgotten that some things aren't transactional. He reminded me. Do you know his name? I do, but I'm respecting his privacy. If he wants to come forward, that's his choice. What I will say is this, he's a single father, a working man who has every reason to take help when it's offered, and he still said no. That kind of integrity is rare. That kind of character is worth more than anything I could pay him. The interviewer smiled, clearly charmed. It sounds like he made quite an impression. He saved my life. Of course he did. Madeline's voice softened. But more than that, he reminded me what real strength looks like. Not power, not wealth, just a person choosing to do the right thing because it's right. We need more of that in the world. The video ended. Evan sat staring at the screen, his chest tight with something he couldn't name. She'd told the truth. She'd kept his name out of it, but she'd also painted him as some kind of saint, which he definitely wasn't. And now the entire region was buzzing with speculation about the mysterious hero who'd rejected money from one of the most powerful women in Pennsylvania. His phone rang. His mother. Evan Michael Brooks, why am I hearing about you on the news from Deborah at church? He closed his eyes. Mom, you pulled a woman out of a burning car and didn't tell me? I did tell you, Thursday night, remember? You said it was a car accident. You didn't say it was Madeline Cross. You didn't say you were all over the news. I'm not all over the news. She didn't use my name. Everyone's talking about it, Evan. Everyone. Deborah recognized the description. Single father, handyman. She put two and two together. Deborah needs a hobby. Don't be flippant. This is serious. Do you understand what you've done? Helped someone. That's it. Janet made a sound of pure maternal frustration. You've caught the attention of a woman who could buy this entire town without blinking. That's not just helping someone. That's stepping into a world you don't understand. I'm not stepping anywhere. I helped her. She thanked me. It's over. Is it? Because it doesn't sound over. It sounds like it's just starting. She wasn't wrong. Evan could feel it, the way you feel weather changing, pressure building before a storm. Something had shifted. Something had been set in motion. I need to pick up Emma, he said, glancing at the clock. I'll call you later. Evan? Later, Mom. I promise. He hung up, logged off the computer, and headed to Lincoln Elementary. Emma was waiting by the front doors with her teacher, Mrs. Chen, whose expression suggested she'd also heard the news. Mr. Brooks, could I have a word? Emma ran to him, backpack bouncing. Daddy, Sophie says you're famous. Evan's stomach sank. I'm not famous, Em. Sophie's mom saw you on TV. Sophie's mom saw a story. That's different. He looked at Mrs. Chen. Is there a problem? Not at all. I just wanted to mention some of the children have been talking. You might want to address it with Emma at home. Help her understand the situation. Mrs. Chen smiled, warm and genuine. What you did was very brave, Mr. Brooks. I was just in the right place. No, you were the right person. She squeezed his arm briefly. Emma's lucky to have you. The drive home was filled with Emma's questions, each one harder to answer than the last. Yes, he'd helped someone. No, he wasn't a superhero. Yes, the woman was okay. No, they weren't friends. Yes, it was dangerous. No, he wouldn't do it again. That last one was a lie, and they both knew it. At home, he made Emma mac and cheese while she did homework at the kitchen table, chattering about her day, about Sophie's birthday party next week, about the class hamster who was still missing and probably living in the walls now. Normal. Ordinary. Exactly what Evan needed. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He considered not answering, considered letting it go to voicemail, pretending he hadn't seen it, but something made him pick up. Mr. Brooks, this is Richard Sutton. I'm an attorney with Cross Enterprises. Evan's grip tightened on the phone. I already told your people no. I understand and I apologize for the persistence. However, Ms. Cross asked me to convey something she thought you should know. The media attention has intensified. Your identity, despite our best efforts, may not remain private much longer. Ms. Cross wants to discuss how to handle that, should it happen. There's nothing to handle. I'm nobody. This will blow over. With respect, sir, you underestimate public interest. A story like this, a working-class hero rejecting money from a billionaire, that's the kind of narrative people want. It's already trending on social media. Local reporters are digging. It's only a matter of time. Evan looked at Emma, absorbed in her math worksheet, blissfully unaware of storms gathering. What does she want? Just a conversation. 1 hour. At your convenience. Fine. Tomorrow, 6 o'clock. But not at her office and not at my place, somewhere public. I'll arrange it and send you the details. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. The next evening, Evan found himself sitting in a quiet corner booth at Riverside Cafe, a coffee shop far enough from town that no one would recognize him but public enough that he felt safe. Madeline arrived exactly on time, walking without the boot now, moving carefully but confidently. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, still expensive probably, but understated, trying to blend in. It almost worked. She slid into the booth across from him, her eyes searching his face. Thank you for meeting me. Your lawyer said I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice, Evan. That's kind of your whole thing. She ordered coffee when the waitress appeared, waited until they were alone again. I'm sorry about the media circus. Are you? Because you're the one who gave the interview. I gave one interview, a controlled message to stop speculation and protect your privacy. What I didn't anticipate was how much people would care. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, a gesture that reminded him of how she'd looked in his kitchen, vulnerable in his oversized shirt. The story resonated. People want heroes. They want to believe someone out there still does the right thing without expectation of reward. I'm not a hero. I'm a guy who stopped. Which makes you exactly what they're looking for. Madeline leaned forward. Here's the situation. 3 reporters have already connected enough dots to narrow the search to this area. One has your name but hasn't published yet. Professional courtesy, since I asked. That won't last. By the end of the week, maybe sooner, you're going to be the story. Evan felt the walls closing in. What do you want me to do about it? Let me help. Let me use my resources to control the narrative before it controls you. I don't want a narrative. I want to be left alone. I understand that, but it's too late. The attention is coming whether you want it or not. The question is whether you face it prepared or blindsided. Her voice softened. I know what it's like to be thrust into public scrutiny when you're not ready. It's invasive, it's brutal, especially when you have someone to protect. Don't bring Emma into this. I'm trying to keep her out of it. That's the point. Madeline pulled out a tablet, tapped the screen, turned it to face him. These are the headlines from the last 48 hours. Look at the comments. Evan scanned the screen. Hundreds of comments, thousands. People speculating, people praising, people already digging through public records trying to identify him. Someone had posted a photo of the accident scene. Someone else had enhanced it, trying to catch a glimpse of him through the rain. It's not going to stop, Madeline said quietly. Not unless we give them something. A statement. An interview. Something that satisfies the curiosity and lets you disappear again. And what do you get out of this? Honestly, peace of mind. I owe you my life, Evan. The least I can do is make sure this doesn't destroy yours. He studied her across the table. This woman who'd walked into his life by accident and stayed by choice, who looked at him like he was a puzzle worth solving. She meant it. Whatever her angle, whatever her game, she genuinely wanted to help, which scared him more than the media attention. One statement, he said finally. One, and then you back off. Deal. They spent the next hour crafting it. Madeline pulled in her PR team via video call, professionals who asked questions Evan didn't want to answer and suggested angles he refused to take. In the end, they settled on something simple. Evan Brooks confirmed he'd assisted in the rescue, appreciated the public's interest, but requested privacy for himself and his daughter. No interviews, no photos, just a brief acknowledgement and a door firmly closed. The statement went out that night. By morning, it had been picked up by every major outlet in the region. The attention didn't stop. It intensified. Reporters showed up at Lincoln Elementary. They left notes on Evan's truck. They called his phone. Numbers he didn't recognize, voices asking for just 5 minutes of his time. Mrs. Patterson started screening his calls. Tommy ran interference at job sites. His mother showed up with groceries and lectures about keeping his head down. And through it all, Madeline stayed in contact. Not pushy, not invasive, just present. A text checking in, a call from her lawyers making sure no one was harassing Emma. Resources offered and mostly declined. On Friday, exactly 1 week after the accident, Evan was installing new gutters on the Hendersons' garage when his phone rang. Unknown number, but not one of the reporters. He answered cautiously. Mr. Brooks, this is Dale Foster from Pennsylvania Family Services. We received a complaint regarding your daughter's welfare and need to schedule a home visit. The world tilted. What complaint? I'm not at liberty to discuss details over the phone. When would be convenient for us to meet? There's no complaint. My daughter is fine. I understand this is difficult, but it's procedure. We take all reports seriously. Evan's hands shook. This is because of the news. Someone saw the story and decided, Mr. Brooks, I really can't discuss Monday. You can come Monday, after Emma's in school. That works. I'll see you at 10. He finished the Henderson job on autopilot, rage and fear warring in his chest. Someone had weaponized his good deed. Someone had seen him on the news and decided he was an unfit parent because he'd taken a risk, because he'd gotten attention, because he was visible. He called Madeline. She answered on the first ring. Evan, I need a lawyer, a good one, now. What happened? He told her. Everything. The call, the complaint, the home visit scheduled for Monday morning. His voice cracked halfway through and he hated it, hated feeling helpless, hated needing help from someone he barely knew. Madeline listened in silence. When he finished, she said, "I'll take care of it. I don't want your money. It's not about money, it's about protecting Emma. Let me do this, please." He wanted to say no, wanted to handle it himself the way he handled everything, with grit and determination and stubborn independence, but this was his daughter. This was too important for pride. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll have someone at your house in an hour. His name is Marcus Webb, best family attorney in the state. He'll walk you through everything." She paused. "Evan, this isn't your fault." "Feels like it is." "I know, but it's not. You did something good, and someone's trying to punish you for it. We won't let them." Marcus Webb arrived 53 minutes later, a compact man in his 50s with kind eyes and a briefcase that looked older than Emma. He sat at Evan's kitchen table, reviewed the situation, and immediately made 3 phone calls that Evan didn't fully understand, but that seemed to shift something in the air. "The complaint is anonymous," Marcus said, making notes, "which means it's likely spurious. Someone trying to cause trouble rather than genuinely concerned about Emma's welfare. We'll cooperate fully with the home visit, demonstrate there's no issue, and file a counter-complaint about harassment." "How much is this going to cost me?" Marcus smiled. "Ms. Cross has retained my services on your behalf. I can't afford—" "You're not paying. This is pro bono, Mr. Brooks. Consider it a thank you for saving my client's life." He closed his notebook. "Now, let's talk about Monday. The social worker will want to see Emma's living space, speak with you about her care, possibly talk to Emma herself. We'll make sure everything goes smoothly." It did. Dale Foster turned out to be a tired woman in her 40s who'd been doing this job too long and could spot a bogus complaint from a mile away. She toured the apartment, small but clean, Emma's room full of drawings and books and toys, asked gentle questions about routines and school and healthcare, and within 40 minutes had seen enough. "Mr. Brooks, this is clearly a waste of everyone's time. Your daughter is well cared for. I'll file my report accordingly." She glanced at Marcus, who'd sat quietly through the entire visit. "Off the record, whoever filed that complaint was hoping to rattle you. Don't let them." After she left, Evan stood in his quiet apartment and felt something crack open in his chest, relief so profound it hurt. Marcus packed his briefcase. "You're clear, but I'd recommend keeping me on retainer for the next few months, just in case anything else comes up." "I told you, I can't." "Pro bono means free, Mr. Brooks. Ms. Cross insists." Marcus handed him a business card. "Call me if anything else happens. Anything at all." Evan called Madeline that afternoon while Emma was at Sophie's birthday party, and he had a few hours of quiet. "It's done," he said when she answered. "Thank you." "You don't need to thank me." "Yeah, I do. What you did, what Marcus did, I couldn't have handled that alone." "You shouldn't have had to handle it at all." Madeline's voice was tight with anger. "People are cruel. They see someone getting attention and they want to tear them down." "Is that what happened to you when you became successful?" "Every day. Still does." She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You learn to build walls. You learn who to trust. You learn that power attracts parasites as much as it attracts opportunity. Sounds lonely." "It is." A pause. "That's why what you did mattered so much, Evan. You saw someone who needed help, and you didn't see dollar signs or connections or what you could get out of it. You just saw a person. That's rare in my world." "Maybe you're in the wrong world." "Maybe I am. But it's the one I built, for better or worse." She cleared her throat, professional armor sliding back into place. "How's Emma handling everything?" "She's 6. She thinks it's exciting that her dad was on the news. She doesn't understand the complicated parts yet." "Good. Let's keep it that way." They talked for another 20 minutes. About nothing. About everything. About the weather, and Emma's love of terrible cartoons, and Madeline's attempt to learn how to cook that ended with a smoke alarm and takeout. Easy conversation, the kind that shouldn't exist between a billionaire CEO and a working-class single father, but did anyway. When Emma came home, sticky with birthday cake and bursting with stories, Evan felt something settle in his chest. They were okay. They'd weathered the storm. Life could go back to normal. It didn't. 2 days later, Evan's landlord called. The building had been sold. New owners. 60 days to vacate. It's nothing personal, Evan. They're renovating, converting to luxury units. You'll get your deposit back, full 60 days notice. I tried to negotiate, but Evan hung up, stared at the water-stained ceiling of the apartment he'd called home for 3 years, and felt the floor drop out from under him. 60 days. He had 60 days to find a new place he could afford, which, in this market, with rent climbing and landlords screening more carefully, was basically impossible. He didn't tell Emma, didn't tell his mother, tried to handle it himself the way he always did. 1 week later, he'd contacted 19 landlords, 17 never called back. 2 rejected his application outright. Insufficient income, insufficient credit, insufficient everything. He was sitting in his truck outside Lincoln Elementary, waiting for Emma's dismissal when Madeline called. I heard about your apartment. How did you... He stopped. Of course she'd heard. She probably had people monitoring everything related to him now. It's fine. I'll figure it out. Evan, I said I'll figure it out. What if I told you I had a solution? Then I'd say I don't want your charity. It's not charity. It's a mortgage-free house that's been sitting empty for 2 years because I can't find the right tenant. Madeline spoke quickly, like she knew he'd try to interrupt. It belonged to my grandmother. 3 bedrooms, yard, good school district. I've been meaning to do something with it, but haven't had time. You'd actually be doing me a favor, keeping it maintained, lived in, preventing it from falling apart. And what would rent be? Whatever you're paying now. That's charity. That's market rate for a property that needs work. You're a handyman, Evan. You could fix it up in exchange for reduced rent. It's a business arrangement. It was charity wrapped in business language, and they both knew it. But Emma was about to lose her home. Emma was about to lose her school, her friends, everything familiar. I need to think about it, he said. Fair enough. The offer stands. Emma burst out of the school building, saw his truck, and ran over. He rolled down the window and she climbed in, already talking about her day, about the art project they'd started, about how Marcus the hamster had finally been found living in the reading corner. Normal, ordinary, precious. That night, after Emma was asleep, Evan stood in his small apartment and did the math. 60 days minus the week already gone. 53 days to find something he could afford that wouldn't fall through. 53 days to uproot his daughter or accept help from a woman who'd already given him too much. He called Madeline at 11:30. The house, he said. I want to see it. Tomorrow. I'll pick you up at 10. The house was in Riverside Heights, 20 minutes from his current apartment, an older neighborhood with tree-lined streets and houses that had been built when people cared about front porches and big yards. Madeline's grandmother's place sat on a corner lot, white with blue shutters, slightly shabby but solid. Good bones, as his father used to say. The roof needs work, Madeline said, unlocking the front door. Probably the plumbing too, but the foundation sound and the electrical was updated 10 years ago. Inside it smelled like dust and old wood and possibility. 3 bedrooms, like she'd said. 1 bathroom that needed renovation. A kitchen with outdated appliances but plenty of space. And a backyard with a swing set that looked like it hadn't been used in years. Emma would love it. What's the catch? Evan asked, standing in the living room, imagining his furniture here, imagining Emma running through these rooms. No catch. You fix what needs fixing. I cover materials. You pay $700 a month, same as your current place, and we call it even. That's half what this place is worth. It's what my grandmother would have charged. She believed in helping people, not profiting off them. Madeline met his eyes. Take it or leave it, Evan, but stop looking at this like charity. It's not. It's 2 people helping each other. He wanted to argue, wanted to find the angle, the trap, the thing that would make this make sense. But he was tired of fighting, tired of pride getting in the way of what Emma needed. When can we move in? Madeline smiled, real, warm, unguarded. Whenever you want. They moved in 3 weeks later, Evan and Emma and Tommy and his mother, all carrying boxes up the front steps while Madeline supervised from the porch, her legs still not quite right, but getting better. Emma ran through the house claiming the bedroom with the window seat, declaring it the best room ever, and Evan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. That evening, after everyone had left and Emma was asleep in her new room, Evan found Madeline sitting on the front porch steps, looking out at the quiet street. "Thank you," he said, sitting beside her, "for all of this. You saved my life. This is the least I could do. You keep saying that, but at some point, we're even. Are we?" She turned to look at him, her expression unreadable in the porch light. "Because from where I'm sitting, you gave me something I didn't know I needed. A reminder that good people still exist, that kindness matters. That's worth more than any house. You're giving me too much credit. And you're not giving yourself enough." She stood, dusted off her jeans. "I should go. You have a lot of unpacking to do." "Madeline?" She paused at the bottom of the steps. "Why are you really doing this?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Because you saw me at my worst, trapped, terrified, vulnerable. And you didn't see an opportunity. You saw a person who needed help. No one's looked at me that way in 20 years, Evan. Maybe I'm trying to return the favor." She left, and Evan sat on his new porch, in his new house, in his new life, and wondered how a single moment of choice had led him here, to a place where everything had changed and nothing would ever be the same. The media attention faded gradually, the way storms do after they've spent their fury. By October, Evan's name was yesterday's news, replaced by election coverage and a scandal involving a state senator and misused campaign funds. People moved on. Life returned to something resembling normal, except it wasn't normal. Not really. Madeline had become part of their lives in ways Evan hadn't anticipated and couldn't quite define. She stopped by on weekends, ostensibly to check on the house repairs, but really to drink coffee on the porch and talk about nothing important. She showed up at Emma's school Halloween parade wearing an expensive suit and looking completely out of place among the yoga pants and fleece jackets, but Emma had been thrilled to introduce Miss Madeline to everyone. She sent books for Emma, thoughtful choices, not expensive ones, things a 6-year-old would actually read. "She's getting attached," Janet said one Sunday afternoon, watching Emma and Madeline build a fairy garden in the backyard. "To the house, to this neighborhood, to her." Evan was replacing the bathroom faucet, his hands buried in plumbing he didn't fully understand. "I know. What happens when Madeline gets bored, when the novelty wears off and she remembers she's a billionaire with better things to do? I don't know, Mom. You need to think about it. You need to protect that little girl's heart." He thought about it constantly. Late at night, when the house was quiet and Emma was asleep, and he lay awake wondering what he'd gotten himself into. Madeline Cross wasn't a friend in any conventional sense. She was a force, powerful, complicated, carrying baggage Evan could only guess at. And yet when she sat on his porch drinking cheap coffee from his chipped mugs, she seemed almost normal, almost like someone he could know, almost like someone he was starting to care about. That thought scared him more than the burning car had. In early November, Madeline called with a request that sounded casual, but felt weighted with something heavier. "Cross Enterprises is hosting a charity gala next Friday, Children's Literacy Foundation. I'd like you to come." Evan was replacing the front porch boards, his phone wedged against his shoulder. "I don't do galas. I know, but this one matters. We're raising money for programs that give books to low-income families, kids like Emma who deserve access to stories." She paused. "I'd like you there, as my guest." "Madeline, before you say no, hear me out. You don't have to stay long. You don't have to talk to anyone. Just show up. Let people see the man who inspired this whole thing, and leave whenever you want, please." He wanted to refuse, wanted to explain that he didn't own a suit, didn't know how to navigate rooms full of wealthy people, didn't belong in her world. But she'd said please, and there was something vulnerable in it that made all his arguments feel hollow. "1 hour," he said, "and you're finding me something to wear because I guarantee I don't own whatever's appropriate." "Deal. I'll send someone over tomorrow." The someone turned out to be a tailor named Vincent, who measured Evan with professional efficiency and promised a suit by Thursday. When it arrived, charcoal gray, perfectly fitted, probably worth more than Evan's truck, he stared at himself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the man looking back. "You look like a prince," Emma declared when she saw him Friday evening. His mother was staying over to watch her, and Emma was treating the whole thing like a fairy tale. "I look ridiculous," Evan muttered. "You look distinguished," Janet corrected, adjusting his tie. "Try to enjoy yourself. When's the last time you did something that wasn't work or Emma?" He couldn't remember. Years, probably. The car Madeline sent was a black town car with a driver named Marcus, who called him Sir, and knew better than to make small talk. They drove to the Riverside Grand Hotel, a historic building downtown that Evan had passed 1,000 times but never entered. Tonight, it was lit up like a beacon, luxury cars lined up at the valet, people in evening wear streaming through the doors. Evan's palms were sweating. "Mr. Brooks?" Marcus had opened his door. "Miss Cross is waiting inside." Right. Of course she was, because leaving him to navigate this alone would be cruel, and whatever else Madeline was, she wasn't cruel. The lobby was overwhelming, crystal chandeliers, marble floors, the sound of a string quartet drifting from somewhere deeper in the building. People mingled in clusters, everyone looking effortlessly elegant, everyone belonging here in ways Evan never would. He spotted her near the entrance to the ballroom, wearing a dark blue gown that managed to be both stunning and understated, her hair up, her whole presence radiating the kind of confidence that came from owning rooms like this. When she saw him, something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe. Or appreciation. "Evan?" She crossed to him, her heels clicking on the marble. "You look uncomfortable?" "I was going to say handsome." She smiled, took his arm. "Thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy for you." "Nothing about the last 2 months has been easy for me." "Fair point." She guided him toward the ballroom. "The format's simple. Cocktail hour, then dinner, then a short program with speeches, and an auction. You don't have to bid on anything. Just smile and nod and try not to look like you're planning an escape." "I'm absolutely planning an escape." "I know. That's what makes you interesting." The ballroom was even more impressive than the lobby. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, round tables set with white linens and elaborate centerpieces, a stage at the far end draped in deep blue fabric. Easily 300 people, all of them wealthy, all of them comfortable in spaces like this. Evan felt like an imposter. Madeline introduced him to a dizzying parade of people whose names he immediately forgot and whose handshakes felt like assessments. CEOs and board members and philanthropists who smiled politely and asked questions that felt like tests. Where did he work? What did he do? How did he know Madeline? Each answer felt inadequate, exposing him as exactly what he was, a working-class guy who didn't belong here. "You're doing fine," Madeline murmured during a brief moment alone. "Stop looking like you're about to bolt." "I am about to bolt. 30 more minutes, then we'll sit for dinner and you can relax." Dinner was at a table near the stage. Evan found himself seated between Madeline and an older woman named Eleanor Hartwick, who ran some kind of investment firm and immediately launched into a story about her grandchildren. On Madeline's other side sat a man in his 50s with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Evan Brooks," the man said, extending his hand across Madeline. "David Thornton. I've heard a lot about you." "Nothing good, I hope," Evan said, attempting humor. "On the contrary, you're the man of the hour, the hero who saved our Madeline." Thornton's tone was light, but something underneath felt sharp. "Must have been quite an experience." "It was an accident. A fortunate one. For Madeline, certainly, and apparently for you as well." Thornton glanced around the table, at the elegant surroundings, the implication clear. "Quite an upgrade from your usual Friday nights, I'd imagine." Evan felt Madeline tense beside him. "David, I'm just making conversation, Madeline. No need to get defensive." Thornton smiled at Evan. "You're a handyman, correct? Must be interesting, moving in the circles you're moving in now." "I fix things," Evan said evenly. "Houses, mostly. Sometimes people's perceptions when they get too narrow." Eleanor Hartwick laughed, sharp and delighted. "Oh, I like him, Madeline. Much better than the last one you brought to these things." Thornton's smile tightened. "Yes, well, we'll see how long this fascination lasts." The rest of dinner passed in a blur of courses Evan couldn't pronounce and conversations he barely followed. Business deals and mergers and stock prices and political connections. He ate quietly, responded when spoken to, and tried not to count the minutes until he could leave. The speeches started after dessert. Various board members thanked donors, highlighted success stories, showed videos of children receiving books and learning to read. It was moving despite Evan's discomfort, a reminder that even in rooms full of wealth and privilege, some people were trying to do genuine good. Then Madeline took the stage. She looked different up there, powerful, commanding, every inch the CEO who'd built an empire. But when she spoke, her voice carried something personal, something real. 6 weeks ago, I nearly died, she began, and the room went silent. A car accident during a storm, the kind of situation where everything goes wrong at once. I was trapped, injured, and running out of time. And then someone stopped. Someone who didn't have to, who had every reason to keep driving, who had his own life and his own problems, but he stopped. She paused, her eyes finding Evans across the room. That man is here tonight, Evan Brooks. And I asked him to come not because I wanted to parade him around as some kind of trophy, but because he represents what this foundation is really about. He represents the idea that ordinary people doing ordinary things can change lives. That kindness matters. That character isn't measured by wealth or status, but by what you do when no one's watching and there's nothing in it for you. The applause started, spreading through the room, and Evan felt every eye turn toward him. His face burned. He wanted to disappear. Evan refused payment for saving my life, Madeline continued. He refused compensation, refused publicity, refused everything except the simple acknowledgement that he'd done what anyone should do. That kind of integrity inspired me. It reminded me why I started this foundation in the first place, to help people who need it, who deserve it, who might not have anyone else stopping for them. More applause. Evan's hands were shaking under the table. So tonight, I'm announcing a new initiative. The Brooks Family Fund will provide direct financial assistance to single parents struggling to make ends meet. Housing support, childcare, education, the things that make the difference between surviving and thriving. Because Evan taught me something important. He taught me that the strongest people aren't the ones with the most power. They're the ones who keep going despite having every reason to quit. They're the ones who put their children first, who work impossible hours, who build dignity from nothing. Those are the people worth investing in. The room erupted. People stood, applauding, some of them turning to Evan with expressions of admiration or curiosity or assessment. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process that Madeline had just announced a charity program named after him and his daughter. She left the stage, worked her way through the crowd, and appeared at his side. "Breathe," she said quietly. "You're turning purple. You named it after Emma. I named it after both of you. Is that okay?" Was it okay? He'd spent 34 years trying to be invisible, trying to keep his head down and his business private. And now his name was attached to a foundation that would be public, permanent, impossible to walk away from. "I should have asked first," Madeline said, reading his silence correctly. "I'm sorry. I got carried away." "How much?" Evan managed. "How much money are we talking about?" "Initial funding is $5 million. More if it's successful." $5 million. In his and Emma's names, helping people like him, people who were drowning and trying not to show it. "I need air," he said. "I'll come with you." "No, just give me a minute." He walked out through the ballroom, through the lobby, out into the November cold. The river was dark beyond the hotel's lights, the city spread out along its banks, and Evan stood there trying to make sense of a world that had tilted so far off its axis he couldn't find level ground anymore. "She means well." David Thornton appeared beside him, cigarette in hand. "But Madeline has a tendency to get swept up in things. People, particularly. She builds them up, invests in them, makes them feel special, and then she moves on." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've known Madeline for 15 years. I've seen this pattern before." Thornton exhaled smoke. "You're not the first person she's tried to save. You won't be the last." "I didn't ask to be saved." "No, but you accepted it anyway. The house, the lawyer, the suit you're wearing." Thornton gestured at him. "You're already in deep, Mr. Brooks. Question is, what happens when she gets bored? When the novelty wears off and you're just another charity case?" Evan's hands curled into fists. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're out of your depth. I know you're playing a game you don't understand with stakes you can't afford. Thornton dropped his cigarette, crushed it under his heel. I'm not trying to be cruel, I'm trying to be honest. Madeline's world eats people like you alive. Protect yourself. Protect your daughter. Before it's too late. He walked back inside, leaving Evan alone with doubts that felt like poison spreading through his chest. When Madeline found him 20 minutes later, he was still standing by the river, hands shoved in his pockets, trying to sort through everything Thornton had said and everything he felt and whether any of this made sense. David got to you, she said. It wasn't a question. He said you have a pattern, that you save people and then move on. David's an ex-boyfriend who never got over the fact that I chose my career over him. He's bitter and petty and half the reason I don't date anymore. She stood beside him, close enough that he could feel her warmth. But he's not entirely wrong. I do have a pattern. I see problems and I try to fix them. Sometimes I overstep. Sometimes I push too hard. Sometimes I forget that people aren't projects. Is that what I am? A project? No. She turned to face him, her expression fierce. You're the person who pulled me out of fire and asked for nothing. You're the man who works himself to exhaustion to give his daughter a good life. You're someone who made me remember what integrity looks like. That's not a project, Evan. That's... She stopped, something vulnerable flashing across her face. That's something I didn't know I needed. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Evan could feel the pull of her, the temptation to step closer, to believe that someone like Madeline Cross could see something worth wanting in someone like him. I don't belong in your world, he said. I know. Tonight, the gala, the foundation, it's not me. I know that too. So what are we doing? What is this? Madeline was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful, measured. I don't know. But I know I don't want to stop. I know that when I'm with you, I feel like myself in ways I haven't in years. I know that Emma makes me laugh and your mother intimidates me and you challenge me without even trying. I know this is complicated and probably a terrible idea, and I should walk away before either of us gets hurt. She met his eyes. But I don't want to walk away. Madeline, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to decide anything tonight. Just think about it. Think about whether maybe this thing between us, whatever it is, might be worth the complication. She left him there, returned to the gala, and Evan stood in the cold trying to imagine a future where this made sense. Where a billionaire CEO and a single father handyman could build something real. Where the distance between their worlds wasn't an impossible chasm, but a bridge they could cross together. It seemed insane. It seemed impossible. But standing there, watching lights reflect off the dark water, Evan realized he wanted to try anyway. He found her 20 minutes later, back in the ballroom, surrounded by people congratulating her on the new fund. She saw him coming and excused herself, meeting him halfway. I'm not good at this, Evan said without preamble. Dating, relationships, any of it. I've been focused on Emma for 6 years. I don't have time or energy for complications. I understand. But, he continued, I also haven't felt this way about someone in a long time, maybe ever, and I think if I walked away without seeing where this goes, I'd regret it. Madeline's smile was small, careful, hopeful. So what are you saying? I'm saying let's try. Slow, careful, with Emma's best interest first. But let's try. Okay, she said softly. Okay. They didn't kiss. The moment was too public, too watched, too fragile for that. But when she took his hand, lacing their fingers together, it felt like a promise. Like the beginning of something that would either save them both or destroy them trying. The following weeks were strange, navigating this new territory between friendship and something more. Madeline came by the house more often, stayed for dinner, helped Emma with homework in ways that suggested she was better at calculus than she let on. They went to Emma's school play together, Evan in the audience with the other parents, Madeline beside him looking out of place but genuinely delighted. They took Emma to the park on Sunday afternoons, pushed her on swings, watched her make friends with other kids, and tried not to acknowledge how much they looked like a family. Janet noticed, of course. Mothers always did. You're falling for her, she said one evening, watching Evan watch Madeline read to Emma before bed. It's complicated. Love usually is. Question is, can you handle it when her world comes calling? when business trips and board meetings and society obligations take precedence? I don't know, Mom. We're taking it day by day. That's not a plan, Evan. That's denial. Maybe it was. But for the first time in 6 years, Evan felt like he was living instead of just surviving. He felt like the tight knot of fear and exhaustion that had lived in his chest since his ex-wife left was finally loosening. He felt like maybe, possibly, there could be more to his life than work, and Emma, and the quiet desperation of making ends meet. He felt like maybe he deserved something good. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-November. Evan was replacing the kitchen sink when his phone rang, Madeline's office number. Evan, it's Andrea. Ms. Cross asked me to let you know she'll be out of town for the next 2 weeks. Business in California, board meetings, some acquisitions that need her attention. 2 weeks. It was nothing. People traveled for work. It was normal, but it felt like the first crack in the foundation they'd been building. Okay, Evan said. Thanks for letting me know. She wanted to call herself, but the schedule's been insane. She said she'll video call Emma when she can. Video calls. Not the same as showing up for dinner, reading bedtime stories, being present in the small, ordinary ways that mattered. Emma took the news hard. But she promised we'd go see the Christmas lights downtown this weekend, she said, her bottom lip trembling. She promised. Something came up for work, baby girl. It happens. But she promised. Evan had no good answer for that. Promises meant something to 6-year-olds. Promises were absolute, unbreakable, sacred. The adult world of complications and competing priorities didn't exist yet for Emma. He hoped it never would. Madeline called that night, her voice tired, apologetic. I'm sorry. This merger came up suddenly, and the board insisted I handle it personally. It's fine. You have a job to do. It's not fine. I promised Emma we'd see the lights. I hate breaking promises to her. I'll take her. We'll take pictures, video chat you from there. She'll understand. Will she? Madeline sounded uncertain in ways Evan had never heard from her. I'm not good at this, Evan. The personal stuff. I've spent 20 years putting work first and everything else second. I don't know how to change that. Then maybe you need to figure it out. Because Emma doesn't understand second place. Kids don't work that way. The silence on the other end was heavy. When Madeline spoke again, her voice was small. I don't want to hurt her. Then don't. Be present when you're here. Follow through on promises. Show up. He softened his tone. I know your work matters. I'm not asking you to give that up. I'm asking you to find balance. What if I can't? It was the question Evan had been avoiding, the fear he hadn't wanted to name. What if this, them, whatever they were building, was impossible? What if Madeline's world and his couldn't coexist? What if someone got hurt trying to bridge a gap that was always going to be too wide? Then we figure it out, he said, because what else could he say? Together. The 2 weeks stretched into 3. Madeline called when she could, video chatted with Emma, sent gifts that arrived by courier and felt like apologies. Emma accepted them with the resilient confusion of childhood, not quite understanding why Miss Madeline was gone, but trusting she'd come back. Evan was less certain. David Thornton's words echoed in his head during quiet moments. She gets swept up in things. She builds people up and then moves on. You're out of your depth. Maybe he was. Maybe this whole thing had been a fantasy from the start. 2 people from incompatible worlds pretending proximity could overcome reality. When Madeline finally returned, she looked exhausted, thinner. The light in her eyes dimmed by weeks of conference rooms and negotiations and the weight of running an empire. She showed up at the house on a Saturday morning, knocked softly, and when Evan opened the door, she just stood there looking lost. I missed you, she said. We missed you too. Emma thundered down the stairs, threw herself at Madeline with the uncomplicated joy of children, and Evan watched them, this powerful woman who commanded billions brought to her knees by a 6-year-old's hug, and felt something shift in his chest. Maybe they could figure this out. Maybe love wasn't about perfect compatibility, but about choosing each other despite the complications. Maybe the distance between their worlds wasn't a wall, but a challenge worth facing. Or maybe he was fooling himself. That afternoon, while Emma napped, Madeline and Evan sat on the porch drinking coffee in comfortable silence. The neighborhood was quiet, leaves falling in the November wind, The world preparing for winter. I brought you something, Madeline said, pulling an envelope from her bag. A contract, official terms for the house, rent, maintenance responsibilities, everything legally documented. Evan took it, surprised. Why now? Because David was right about one thing. I do have a pattern of making things personal that should be professional, and I don't want this, the house, your stability, Emma's home, to be dependent on whatever happens between us. She met his eyes. If we don't work out, if this thing between us falls apart, I don't want you to lose what you've built here. So I'm making it official. Business arrangement, legal protections. Your home stays your home regardless. It was practical, thoughtful, the kind of thing someone did when they were thinking long-term, when they were protecting people they cared about. It also felt like she was preparing for failure. What if we do work out? Evan asked. Then we renegotiate, together, as partners. She smiled, tentative. But first we have to survive the complications. And I wanted you to know, whatever happens, I've got Emma's back. And yours. Evan signed the contract that night, witnessed by his mother, who asked approximately 15 pointed questions about terms and conditions and whether Evan had completely lost his mind. The answer to that last one was probably yes. But he'd stopped caring about sanity somewhere around the moment he'd pulled Madeline Cross from a burning car and discovered that one choice could change everything. December arrived with the first snow, transforming the neighborhood into something from a Christmas card. Emma made snow angels in the backyard. Madeline taught her to build a proper snowman. Evan watched them from the kitchen window, coffee in hand, and felt the weight of possibilities settle over him like that fresh snow, beautiful, fragile, covering everything in white until you couldn't see what lay underneath. They were building something. Whether it would last through winter was anyone's guess. But for now, in this moment, with his daughter laughing and the woman he was falling for kneeling in the snow beside her, Evan chose to believe in possibilities, even the impossible ones. Christmas morning arrived with the kind of quiet that only fresh snow could bring, the world muffled and peaceful outside the windows of the house that had become home. Emma was up before dawn, as children always were on Christmas, her excited whispers carrying through the walls until Evan gave up on sleep and shuffled downstairs to start coffee. The living room looked like a magazine spread, not because of expense, but because of care. He and Emma had decorated together over the past few weeks, stringing lights around windows, hanging ornaments she'd made in school, placing the modest tree in the corner where it caught the morning light. Under it sat presents wrapped in paper Emma had chosen herself, bright and chaotic and perfect. And sitting on the couch, wrapped in one of his flannel blankets, was Madeline. Evan stopped in the doorway. When did you get here? Around midnight. I used the key you gave me. Hope that's okay. She smiled, sleep-tousled and makeup-free, looking nothing like the polished CEO and everything like someone who belonged here. I couldn't miss Christmas morning with you two. You said you had meetings in New York through the 26th. I canceled them. She stood, padding over to him in bare feet. Some things matter more than board meetings. Emma's footsteps thundered on the stairs, and then she was launching herself into the living room, eyes wide at the presents, the lights, the magic of Christmas morning. When she saw Madeline, her squeal of delight could probably be heard 3 houses down. You came, Daddy, she came. I see that, baby girl. They spent the morning in pajamas, opening presents slowly the way Evan insisted, one at a time, savoring each moment. Emma got books and art supplies and a bicycle from Evan's mother that she'd been wanting for months. From Madeline, she got a telescope with a note that said, "For looking at stars and dreaming big." It's perfect, Emma breathed, already trying to set it up in the living room. That's for outside, Em, Evan said. When it's not freezing? But I want to use it now. Madeline laughed. Tell you what, tomorrow night, if it's clear, we'll go stargazing. Deal? Deal. Evan's gifts were more modest. A new set of work gloves from Emma, a framed drawing she'd made of the 3 of them that made his throat tight, and from Madeline, a leather tool belt with his initials engraved on the buckle. It's too much, he said automatically. It's practical. You needed a new one. Yours is falling apart. She pulled out a second package, smaller, wrapped in plain paper. This is the real gift. Inside was a simple frame, and inside that was a photo he'd never seen. Madeline in the hospital the day after the accident, battered and bandaged but smiling at the camera. On the back, in her handwriting, "The day everything changed, thank you for being brave enough to stop." Now, Evan couldn't speak around the emotion lodged in his chest. "Too much?" Madeline asked quietly. He shook his head, pulled her close, and held on while Emma chattered about stars and bicycles and whether Santa had eaten all the cookies they'd left out. Janet arrived mid-morning with enough food to feed 10 people and opinions about everything. She'd softened toward Madeline over the past months, though she still watched their interactions with the protective wariness of a mother who'd seen her son hurt before and would do anything to prevent it happening again. "How long are you staying?" she asked Madeline while they worked together in the kitchen, Evan banished to the living room with Emma. "Through New Year's. I cleared my schedule." "That's almost 2 weeks. What about your company?" "My company will survive without me for 2 weeks. They might even thrive." Madeline was chopping vegetables with the careful precision of someone who'd learned to cook from YouTube videos. "I know you worry about Evan, about Emma. I would too, in your position. But I'm not going anywhere. I know how this looks. Rich woman playing house with the working class. I know people think I'll get bored and move on. Maybe I would have, 6 months ago." She set down the knife, met Janet's eyes. "But I've spent 20 years building a company and forgetting to build a life. Evan reminded me what matters. Emma reminds me every time I see her. I'm not walking away from that." Janet studied her for a long moment. "You hurt them, and you'll answer to me." "I'd expect nothing less." They called a truce after that, unspoken but real. And Christmas dinner was chaotic and warm and everything a holiday should be. Tommy showed up with his girlfriend Anna, and they all squeezed around Evan's modest dining table, passing dishes and telling stories and laughing at Emma's jokes that didn't quite make sense but were funny anyway. After dinner, while Emma played with her new toys and the adults cleaned up, Tommy pulled Evan aside. "You look happy, man. Like, actually happy. Haven't seen that in years." "Yeah, well, things are good." "Things are terrifying, you mean? You're dating a billionaire. That's insane." "I'm aware. But you're doing it anyway." "Yeah, I am." Evan glanced toward the kitchen where Madeline was arguing good-naturedly with his mother about proper dishwashing technique. "She's not what I expected. She's real, Tommy. Complicated and sometimes too focused on work and completely out of touch with normal life. But she's real. And she makes me want to be better." "Then don't screw it up." Helpful advice. "I'm serious. You've got something good here. Something most people never find. Hold on to it." Evan intended to try. The week between Christmas and New Year's fell into an easy rhythm. Madeline worked mornings from Evan's kitchen table, laptop and phone, and video conferences that sometimes made Emma giggle at the serious business talk. Afternoons were for them. Ice skating at the community rink, building an elaborate snow fort in the backyard, teaching Emma to make hot chocolate the way Evan's grandmother had taught him. Evenings were movie marathons and board games, and Emma falling asleep between them on the couch, content and secure in ways that made Evan's chest ache with hope and fear in equal measure. On the 28th, after Emma was in bed, Madeline pulled out her tablet. "I want to show you something. The Brooks Family Fund launched officially last week." She brought up a website, clean and professional, with photos of families and children and the kind of hope that only came from having a safety net when you were falling. The homepage had a counter showing donations received, applications processed, families helped. 53 families in the first week, Madeline said. Single parents who were facing eviction or couldn't afford childcare or were choosing between medicine and food, we're helping them. Because of you. Because of your money. Because of your example. The donations spiked after you agreed to be the public face. People connect with your story, Evan. They see themselves in you. He scrolled through testimonials from parents whose lives had been changed by a few $1,000s at the right moment. Rent paid, childcare covered, medical bills handled, small interventions that meant the difference between drowning and breathing. "This is what I meant," Madeline said quietly, "about you saving me. You didn't just pull me out of that car. You reminded me why I started Cross Enterprises in the first place, to build something that mattered. I got lost somewhere along the way, chasing growth and profit margins and market dominance. You brought me back. I didn't do anything. You did everything. She took his hand. I've been thinking. The foundation needs someone to run it full time, someone who understands what these families are going through because they've lived it, someone with integrity and compassion and the kind of authenticity that can't be faked. Evan's stomach dropped. Madeline, hear me out. The position pays well, not CEO money, but comfortable. Enough that you wouldn't have to take handyman jobs you hate. Enough that Emma would be secure. You'd have health insurance, retirement benefits, a team to support you, and you'd be helping people every single day instead of fixing leaky faucets. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a purpose. She leaned forward, intense. You're wasting your potential crawling under houses, Evan. You could be making real impact. You could be changing lives the way yours was changed. My life was changed because I was struggling and you helped. That's not replicable, isn't it? That's exactly what the fund does. Helps people who are struggling. You'd be incredible at it. He wanted to say yes. The offer was generous, life-changing, exactly the kind of opportunity people like him never got. But something about it felt wrong, like accepting would shift the balance between them in ways he couldn't take back. I need to think about it, he said. Disappointment flickered across her face, quickly hidden. Of course. Take your time. The position isn't going anywhere. But something had shifted in the air between them, a tension that hadn't been there before. They went to bed that night without resolving it, lying side by side in Evan's room. Madeline had been staying there, in his space, in his life, both pretending to sleep while their minds churned with unspoken thoughts. The next morning, David Thornton called. Evan was replacing a loose board on the back porch when his phone rang. Unknown number, professional voice on the other end. Mr. Brooks? David Thornton. We met at the gala. I wonder if we might talk. I have nothing to say to you. 5 minutes of your time. That's all I ask. There are things you should know about Madeline, about what you're getting into. Evan should have hung up, should have deleted the number and forgotten about it, but Thornton's words from the gala still lived in his head, poisonous doubts that grew in quiet moments. 5 minutes, he said. They met at a diner on the edge of town, neutral territory, Thornton already seated when Evan arrived. He looked exactly as he had at the gala, expensive suit, practiced smile, eyes that calculated everything. Thank you for coming. I know you don't trust me. I don't even like you. Fair enough, I don't particularly like myself these days. Thornton gestured to the seat across from him. I'm going to be honest with you, Mr. Brooks, because I think you deserve honesty. Madeline is extraordinary, brilliant, driven, capable of changing the world when she puts her mind to it. She's also deeply, fundamentally broken. Everyone's broken. What's your point? My point is that she doesn't know how to have relationships that aren't transactional. She sees problems and fixes them. She sees potential and invests in it. She builds people up, makes them dependent on her, and when they inevitably disappoint her or fail to meet her expectations, she moves on. I've seen her do it to employees, to business partners, to... He stopped. To me. So you're bitter. I already knew that. I'm realistic. She's offering you a job, isn't she? Running her foundation. Evan's silence was answer enough. Of course she is. It's her pattern. She pulls you in, makes you need her, and then she owns you. That's how she operates in business. It's how she operates in life. And when you're no longer interesting, when the shine wears off, she'll replace you with the next project. You don't know what we have. Don't I? I've watched her do this before. There was Marcus, the struggling artist she discovered. Funded his exhibitions, introduced him to collectors, made him successful. Then got bored and moved on. He couldn't handle it. Last I heard, he's teaching art to middle schoolers in Ohio. Then Catherine, the nonprofit director she mentored. Madeline poured resources into her organization, promised partnership, then pulled out when a better opportunity came along. Catherine's nonprofit folded within a year. Thornton leaned forward. And then there was me. 10 years ago, young lawyer at her company, working my way up. We fell in love, or I thought we did. She promised we'd build something together, blend our lives, make it work. Then a major acquisition came through, and suddenly I was in the way. Suddenly my needs were inconvenient. She chose the deal over me without hesitation. Maybe you weren't worth choosing. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe I was too busy. 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 Or maybe she's incapable of choosing anyone over her ambition. Think about it, Evan. Really think. She's already positioned you to need her. The house, oh, she made it legal and official, but she still owns it. The lawyer, when child services came calling, she provided that. The suit for the gala, the connections, the foundation named after your daughter. She's built a web around you, and you didn't even notice it happening. Evan stood. This conversation is over. Wait, just... Thornton pulled out a business card. When it falls apart, and it will, call me. I can help you land on your feet. Legal advice, connections, whatever you need. No strings attached. Why would you help me? Because I don't want you to go through what I did. Because watching Madeline do this again is like watching a car accident in slow motion. Thornton's expression was almost sincere. Because maybe if you're prepared, you'll survive it better than I did. Evan took the card, not because he trusted Thornton, but because refusing it felt like hubris. He left the diner with doubts blooming like poison in his chest, Thornton's words echoing louder than he wanted to admit. When he got home, Madeline was in the kitchen making lunch, Emma helping by stirring ingredients in ways that absolutely weren't helping. They looked domestic and perfect and exactly like what Evan wanted his life to be. But Thornton's accusations wouldn't stop replaying. The house, the lawyer, the job offer. Was it generosity or control? Was it love or pattern? How could he tell the difference when he'd never been loved by someone this powerful before? Where were you? Madeline asked, plating sandwiches. Running errands. Need anything from town? It was a lie. The first real lie he'd told her. And it sat in his stomach like lead. That evening, after Emma was asleep, they sat on the couch with wine and silence. Madeline curled against him, her head on his shoulder, and Evan tried to feel the peace that should come from this moment. Instead, he felt Thornton's words worming through his thoughts, poisoning everything. The job offer, he said finally. Is it real? Or is it about keeping me close? Madeline sat up, studying him. Where is this coming from? Just answer the question. It's real. The foundation needs leadership. You'd be perfect for it. Would I? Or would I just be convenient? Already invested, already loyal, already dependent on you for housing and legal support and... Stop. Her voice was sharp. What happened today? What changed? He should tell her about Thornton, should lay it all out and trust her to defend herself. But the doubts had taken root, and he couldn't shake the feeling that Thornton might be right. Nothing changed. I'm just seeing things clearly for the first time. He stood, putting distance between them. You've built my entire life around you, Madeline. My house, my daughter's stability, my future employment. I didn't see it happening, but it did. And now I'm wondering what happens when this, he gestured between them, stops being interesting to you. That's not fair. Isn't it? How many people have you saved before me? How many projects have you invested in and walked away from? Her face went pale. Who have you been talking to? Does it matter? Is it true? The silence stretched too long. When she finally spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. I have a history of getting intensely invested in people and causes. I won't deny that. But I didn't plan this with you. You think I engineered falling in love with you? You're in love with me? Yes, you idiot. Why else would I cancel meetings and spend holidays in Pennsylvania and teach your daughter to build snowmen? Tears welled in her eyes, angry and hurt. You think I do that for projects? I don't know what to think anymore. Then think about this. I offered you the house with a legal contract protecting you regardless of our relationship. I could have made you dependent, that's what you're accusing me of, but I explicitly didn't. I gave you security separate from us. How is that control? She had a point. The contract had been designed to protect him, to ensure he couldn't lose his home even if they fell apart. That wasn't the action of someone building a web. But Thornton's words still echoed. She gets swept up in things. She builds people up and moves on. I need some air, Evan said. Evan, please. I just need to think. He walked out into the cold December night, his breath fogging in the air, his mind a mess of competing truths. Madeline loved him. He believed that. But did she love him enough to stay when things got hard? When the novelty wore off and he was just a handyman with a daughter and bills to pay? Or would she eventually choose her empire over their life together? He didn't know. And not knowing was terrifying. When he came back inside an hour later, Madeline was packing. "What are you doing?" "Giving you space. You clearly need it." Her voice was flat, professional, all the warmth gone. "I'll stay at a hotel until New Year's. Then I'll head back to Pittsburgh." "Madeline, you think I'm trying to control you. You think this is all some elaborate manipulation. I can't defend myself against accusations like that, Evan. If you don't trust me, we have nothing." "I want to trust you. I'm just scared." "I know. So am I." She zipped her bag, met his eyes. "I've never felt this way about anyone. Never wanted to build a life with someone. Never imagined putting anything above my work. You changed that. You and Emma. And if you think that's not terrifying for me, you're wrong. Then help me understand. Make me see that this is real and not just another pattern you'll grow tired of." "I can't prove the future, Evan. I can only show you the present. And right now, in this present, I choose you. I choose Emma. I choose this complicated, imperfect, beautiful thing we're building." She grabbed her coat. "But you have to choose it too. You have to choose to believe in it. Otherwise, we're both just waiting for it to fail." She left, and the house felt hollow without her. Emma woke the next morning asking where Miss Madeline was, and Evan had no good answer. Gone. Thinking, giving Daddy time to figure things out. "Is she coming back?" "I don't know, baby girl." "But you love her, right? And she loves us?" Out of the mouths of children, simple questions with complicated answers. Or maybe not complicated at all. Maybe it really was that simple. They loved each other, so they should be together. The rest was just fear and doubt and the weight of past hurts making them second-guess something good. Evan called his mother. "I think I'm sabotaging the best thing that's ever happened to me." "Then fix it." "How?" "Stop letting other people's failures dictate your future. Stop looking for reasons it won't work and start fighting for reasons it will. And for heaven's sake, stop being your own worst enemy." Helpful mom. "I'm serious, Evan. You've spent 6 years protecting yourself, protecting Emma, building walls so high nothing could hurt you. Madeline climbed those walls. She's inside. And now you're trying to push her back out because you're terrified of what happens if she stays. That's not courage. That's cowardice." The words stung because they were true. He was scared. Scared of being hurt. Scared of Emma being hurt. Scared of depending on someone who might leave the way his ex-wife had left. But Madeline wasn't his ex. She'd proven that over and over in the past months. She'd shown up, followed through, built something real with them. And he was throwing it away because David Thornton, a bitter ex-boyfriend, had planted seeds of doubt. He called Madeline. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice guarded. "I'm an idiot," he said. "I'm listening." "David Thornton called me. Said things about your history with people, about patterns, about how you'd eventually get bored and move on. And I let it get in my head because I'm scared of this working almost as much as I'm scared of it not working. Because if this is real, if you're really in this for the long haul, then I have to be all in too. And I haven't been all in with anyone since Emma was born." Silence on the other end, then quietly, "David called you." "Yeah." "And you believed him?" "Not entirely, but enough to question things, enough to hurt you." Evan ran his hand through his hair. "I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that. You've been nothing but honest and generous and present, and I repaid that by accusing you of manipulation. That was wrong. David's an ex who can't let go of our relationship failing, but he's not wrong about everything. I do have a pattern of intense investment followed by moving on. I've done it in business, in friendships, in past relationships. I get swept up in potential and then get frustrated when reality doesn't match what I imagined." She paused. "But this isn't that. What I feel for you isn't a business opportunity or a project to fix. I don't have words for it, Evan. You frustrate me and challenge me and make me want to be better. Emma makes me laugh and reminds me what matters. This life we're building is messy and imperfect and nothing like what I thought I wanted, but it's everything I need. I believe you." "Do you? Really?" "Yes, and I'm sorry I doubted it. Come home." "That's your house, not mine." "Then come to our house, because it doesn't feel like home when you're not here." She was quiet for so long Evan thought the call had dropped. Then, "I'll be there in an hour." She arrived in 45 minutes, and when Evan opened the door, she walked straight into his arms. They stood there holding each other, not speaking, letting the silence say everything words couldn't. "I love you," Evan said into her hair. "I'm terrified of it, but I love you. I love you too, and I'm just as terrified. Then we'll be terrified together." Emma appeared on the stairs, rubbed her eyes, and smiled. "Miss Madeline, you came back." "Of course I did, sweetheart. I promised we'd go stargazing, remember?" That night, after Emma was asleep, Evan and Madeline stood in the backyard with the telescope, looking at stars neither of them could name. The air was cold and clear, and the sky was full of light that had traveled millions of miles just to reach them. "I'm taking the job," Evan said. "If the offer's still open." "It is, but only if you want it. No pressure." "I want it, not because you offered it, but because it's the right move. For me, for Emma, for all those families who need someone who understands what they're going through." He looked at her. "But we need boundaries. Clear separation between the foundation and us. Professional at work, personal at home. Can you do that?" "I can try. I'm not great at boundaries, but I'll learn." "Then we'll learn together." They kissed under the stars, and for the first time since this whole thing started, Evan felt certain. Not of the future, that was unknowable, but of the choice. He was choosing her, choosing this complicated, imperfect love, choosing to believe that sometimes the impossible things were worth reaching for, even if it scared him to death. Spring arrived slowly that year, winter reluctant to release its hold on Pennsylvania. But by late March, the snow had finally melted. Crocuses were pushing through the mud in the backyard, and Evan Brooks was sitting in an office that still didn't quite feel like his. The Brooks Family Fund occupied the third floor of a renovated building in downtown Pittsburgh, close enough to Cross Enterprises that Madeline could walk over during lunch, but far enough that it felt independent. Evan's office had windows overlooking the river, a desk that was too nice, and walls he hadn't yet figured out how to decorate. His assistant, an efficient woman named Patricia, who'd worked in nonprofits for 20 years, kept leaving him notes about meetings and donor calls and operational decisions that still felt surreal. 3 months into the job, he was still adjusting, still learning the language of grant applications and impact metrics and board presentations, still feeling like an imposter every time someone called him Director Brooks. But the work itself felt right. Every application he reviewed was a story he understood intimately. The single mother choosing between rent and groceries, the father working 3 jobs and still falling short, the family one emergency away from homelessness. He knew these people because he'd been these people, and now he had the resources to help them. His phone buzzed. "Madeline." "Lunch? I need to escape this budget meeting before I say something I'll regret." "I have a donor call at 1. I'll have you back by 12:45. Please, save me from my own board." He smiled. Corner Deli, 20 minutes. They'd fallen into this rhythm over the past months, stolen lunches and careful boundaries between professional and personal. At work, Madeline was his boss's boss, head of the corporation that funded the foundation. At home, she was the woman who helped Emma with math homework and fell asleep during movies and burned dinner more often than not. It was complicated. It was imperfect. It was working. The deli was crowded with the lunch rush, but they found a corner table, ordered sandwiches neither of them would finish, and sat in the comfortable silence that came from knowing someone well enough that quiet wasn't awkward. "How's the Morrison application looking?" Madeline asked, picking at her coleslaw. "Single dad, 2 kids, just lost his job. Needs 3 months' rent to avoid eviction while he finds new work." Evan pulled out his phone, showed her the file. "He's perfect for the program. Patricia already drafted approval." "Then why do you look worried?" "Because we got 43 applications this week and can only fund 12. Every file I approve means 3 I reject. People who need help just as badly but won't get it because we don't have unlimited resources. That's the reality of nonprofit work. You save who you can." "I know. Doesn't make it easier." He set down his sandwich. "I've been thinking. The fund's working, but it's reactive. We wait for crises, then intervene. What if we could be proactive? Prevention instead of emergency response." Madeline leaned forward, interested. What did you have in mind? Financial literacy programs, job training partnerships, childcare cooperatives where parents help each other instead of paying impossible rates, long-term solutions that address root causes instead of just symptoms. He'd been working on this proposal for weeks, researching models from other cities, running numbers until his eyes crossed. It would require more funding, more staff, more infrastructure, but it could change everything. Write it up, present it to the board next month. They'll think I'm overreaching, 3 months in and I'm already asking for expansion. They'll think you're visionary, which you are. She reached across the table, squeezed his hand. This is why I wanted you for this job, Evan. Not because I was trying to control you or keep you close, because you see possibilities where others see problems. You lead with empathy. That's rare. Her words settled something in his chest, the last lingering doubts from Thornton's poison finally dissolving. This was real. The job, the relationship, the life they were building, all of it was real. His phone rang. Patricia. I'm sorry to interrupt lunch, but we have a situation. The Martinez family, you approved their housing assistance last month? Their landlord is trying to evict them anyway, says the check bounced. Evan's jaw tightened. It didn't bounce. I verified the payment myself. I know, but the landlord's claiming otherwise and filed eviction paperwork. Mrs. Martinez is in the lobby. She's terrified. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He hung up, looked at Madeline. I have to go. Go, I'll handle the check. This is my job. And that landlord is defrauding a family we're trying to help, which makes it my problem too. Her expression hardened into something Evan rarely saw. The CEO who'd built an empire and knew how to wield power. I'll make some calls. By this afternoon, that landlord will wish he'd never heard the name Martinez. She wasn't exaggerating. By 3 o'clock, Marcus Webb had filed legal complaints against the landlord, the housing authority had launched an investigation, and the local news was running a story about predatory rental practices. By 5, the landlord had withdrawn the eviction and issued a public apology. Mrs. Martinez cried in Evan's office, her 2 children clinging to her legs, relief and gratitude pouring out in Spanish and broken English. Evan sat with them, gave the kids coloring books from his drawer, and promised they were safe now. The foundation would make sure of it. After they left, he sat alone in his office, watching the sun set over Pittsburgh, and felt the weight of responsibility settle over his shoulders. This was real power. Not the ability to make money or close deals, but the capacity to change lives with a phone call. To stand between vulnerable people and the systems trying to crush them. To matter in ways that actually mattered. His phone buzzed. Emma, calling from his mother's house where she went after school on weekdays. Daddy, guess what? I got picked for the lead in the spring play. That's amazing, baby girl. What's the play? The Wizard of Oz. I'm Dorothy. Miss Chen says I'm perfect because I'm good at singing, and I already know how to wear ruby slippers because of Halloween. He could hear her bouncing, practically vibrating with excitement through the phone. I'm so proud of you, Em. Can you come to rehearsals? And can Miss Madeline come to the show, please? We'll both be there, I promise. Pinky promise? Pinky promise. She chattered about the play, about her lines, about the songs she'd have to learn. 7 years old now and growing so fast it made his heart ache. He remembered when she was small enough to fit in one arm, when her whole world was whatever room he was in. Now she had friends and activities and dreams that had nothing to do with him. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. That evening, Madeline came over with Thai food and exhaustion written across her face. Evan was helping Emma practice her lines, reading the Scarecrow's parts with exaggerated enthusiasm, while she giggled and corrected his pronunciation. There's no place like home, Emma declared dramatically, clicking her sneakers together. Perfect, Madeline said from the doorway. You're going to be incredible. Emma ran to her, already launching into the full story of auditions and callbacks, and how Sophie was jealous but also happy for her because that's what best friends do. Madeline listened with the kind of attention that made Emma feel like the most important person in the world. Later, after Emma was in bed and they were curled on the couch with wine and silence, Madeline said quietly, I got offered a position in New York. Evan's stomach dropped. What kind of position? CEO of a venture capital firm, massive portfolio, unlimited resources, the kind of opportunity people spend careers working toward. She wasn't looking at him, her gaze fixed on her wine glass. They approached me last week, flew me out for meetings yesterday while you were dealing with the Martinez situation. And you're considering it. I don't know. A year ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. It's everything I've worked for. More influence, more power, more ability to shape markets and industries. She finally met his eyes. But a year ago, I didn't have this. You, Emma. A life that feels like living instead of just achieving. What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me what to do. I want you to make this decision easy. I can't do that. This is your career, your choice. I won't be the reason you resent giving up an opportunity. And if I take it, if I move to New York? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Long distance was possible, but brutal. Emma would be devastated. Their careful balance would shatter. But Evan couldn't ask her to stay, couldn't make her choose between her ambitions and their relationship. That's what his ex-wife had resented, being forced to choose between her career and motherhood, between her dreams and his needs. He wouldn't do that to Madeline. Then we figure it out, he said, even though the words tasted like ash. We don't quit just because it gets hard. You do long distance? You'd be okay with me being in New York while you're here with Emma? No, I wouldn't be okay with it at all. I'd hate every minute. He took her hand, but I'd do it anyway because I love you. Because your dreams matter as much as mine. Because I won't be the man who holds you back. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't want to choose between you and my career. Maybe you don't have to. Maybe there's a third option we haven't thought of yet. They sat with that possibility, turning it over, examining it from different angles. Madeline could commute. Evan could move. They could do splits, part-time in New York, part-time here. None of the options were perfect, but perfection was overrated anyway. I need time to think, Madeline said finally. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. She stayed the night, curled against him in the dark, and Evan lay awake wondering if loving someone meant letting them go or fighting like hell to make them stay. He didn't have the answer. Wasn't sure there was one. The next morning brought clarity from an unexpected source. Emma came into the kitchen while Evan was making breakfast, her expression serious in that way children got when they were working through big feelings. Daddy? Is Miss Madeline leaving? He crouched down to her level. Where did you hear that? I heard you talking last night. She got a job in New York. Emma's bottom lip trembled. Is she going away like Mommy did? Evan's heart cracked. Baby, listen to me. Miss Madeline loves us. Whatever happens, that doesn't change. She's not going away like Mommy. She would never just leave without talking to us first. But she might still go. She might. Sometimes grown-ups have important jobs in different places. But that doesn't mean she stops being part of our family. We're a family. Were they? Officially, no. Madeline didn't live here full-time. They hadn't discussed marriage or formal commitments. But in every way that mattered, yes. They were a family. Yeah, Em, we are. Then she should stay. Families stay together. Out of the mouths of children, cutting through complexity to simple truth. Families stayed together. Everything else was just logistics. Madeline appeared in the doorway, still in Evan's old t-shirt, her hair a mess, makeupless and beautiful. She'd heard everything. Emma's right, she said quietly. Families stay together. Madeline, I'm turning down New York. She came into the kitchen, sat beside Emma at the table. I've spent 20 years chasing bigger and better opportunities. And you know what I learned? The biggest opportunity of my life is right here. It's Sunday morning breakfast and helping with homework and watching terrible plays where 7-year-olds forget their lines. It's board meetings that actually matter and helping families keep their homes and coming back every night to people who love me for who I am, not what I can do for them. You'd give up being a CEO? I'm already a CEO, just of a different kind of empire. She smiled at Emma. One that measures success in hugs instead of stock prices. Emma launched herself at Madeline, nearly knocking her off the chair. Evan stood there watching them, his throat tight with emotion, wondering how he'd gotten so lucky. How a single moment of choosing to stop on a rainy night had led to this, to love and family, and a future that looked nothing like what he'd planned, but everything like what he needed. That afternoon, Madeline made the call declining the New York position. Then she made another call, this one to her board. I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations at Cross Enterprises, promoting Michael Chen to CEO. I'll stay on as board chair, but my focus is shifting to the foundation. She paused, listening to whatever protests were coming through the phone. This isn't a retirement, this is a refocus, and it's not up for debate. She hung up, looked at Evan. I'm terrified. Of what? Of being irrelevant, of losing my identity. I've been CEO of Cross Enterprises for 15 years. Without that, I don't know who I am. You're Madeline. You're the woman who survived a car crash and turned it into an opportunity to help thousands of people. You're the person Emma trusts and my mother actually likes. You're someone who laughs at terrible jokes and cries during animated movies and makes the world better just by being in it. He pulled her close. That's who you are. The CEO title is just decoration. Spring turned to summer, and life found its new rhythm. Madeline transitioned out of Cross Enterprises, handed over responsibilities, and discovered she didn't miss the endless meetings or corporate politics. She threw herself into the foundation with the same intensity she'd brought to business. But now the metrics that mattered were families housed and children fed, and futures changed. She and Evan expanded the foundation's programming, launched the proactive initiatives he'd proposed, built partnerships with schools and community organizations. The Brooks Family Fund became a model other cities studied and replicated. National media covered their approach. Evan gave interviews that made him profoundly uncomfortable, but helped spread the message. Through it all, they built a life. Madeline moved into the house officially, her designer clothes crowding Evan's closet, her expensive coffee maker taking over counter space, her presence filling rooms that had been too empty. Emma thrived, secure in the knowledge that her family was solid and permanent. Janet stopped giving Madeline suspicious looks and started inviting her to church socials. In July, on a Saturday afternoon while Emma was at Sophie's house, Evan took Madeline to the creek where he'd pulled her from the burning car almost a year ago. The water was low, peaceful, nothing like the raging flood that had nearly killed her. "Why are we here?" she asked. "Because this is where it started, where my life changed." He turned to face her. "I've been thinking about what you said at Christmas, about being terrified, about choosing each other." "Evan, let me finish." He pulled a small box from his pocket, his hands shaking slightly. "I'm not good with words, never have been. But I know that pulling you out of that car was the best decision I've ever made. Not because of everything that came after, the house and the job and the foundation, but because I found you. Because you saw something in me worth saving too." He opened the box. The ring was simple, elegant, nothing like the massive diamonds Madeline could afford, but something that felt right. "I'm asking you to marry me, to officially be part of this family, to build a life that's complicated and imperfect and more than I ever thought possible." Tears streamed down her face. "Yes, obviously yes." "I haven't finished the speech." "I don't need a speech. I just need you." She kissed him, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, Evan Brooks, I'll marry you. I'll be Emma's stepmother. I'll live in this house and work at this foundation and build this life with you. Yes, to all of it." The ring fit perfectly. They stood by the creek holding each other, and somewhere in the trees a bird sang, and the water moved over rocks that had been there for centuries and would be there for centuries more, and everything felt right. They told Emma that evening, presented it like the big news it was. She screamed with joy, demanded to be the flower girl, and immediately started planning a wedding that involved far too many sparkles and at least one pony. "We're not having a pony at the wedding, Em," Evan said, "but Miss Madeline's rich. She can afford a pony." Madeline laughed. "How about we compromise? No pony, but you can pick your dress." "Any dress?" "Within reason." Emma considered this. "Deal. But I still think a pony would be cool." They married in September, 1 year almost to the day after the accident. Small ceremony, just family and close friends, in the backyard of the house that had become their home. Emma was the flower girl in a dress that was indeed covered in sparkles. Tommy was Evan's best man. Janet cried through the entire ceremony. Even David Thornton sent a card, grudging congratulations and an admission that maybe he'd been wrong about Madeline's capacity for commitment. The reception was at Riverside Cafe, the same place where Evan and Madeline had first discussed what to do about media attention. Tommy gave a speech about Evan being too stubborn for his own good, but finally finding someone stubborn enough to match. Madeline's COO talked about watching her transform from a workaholic into someone who actually took vacations and knew her neighbors' names. Emma gave a speech too, 7 years old and fearless, talking about how Miss Madeline was now Mommy Madeline and how they were a real family now, officially, and how love was the best thing ever. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. That night, after the reception ended and Emma was asleep at Janet's house giving them one night alone, Evan and Madeline stood on their porch looking at stars. "No regrets?" he asked. "About marrying you? Not even close." She leaned into him. "About leaving Cross Enterprises? Sometimes. About turning down New York? Never." "What if you get bored? What if saving struggling families isn't exciting enough long term? Then we'll figure something else out. Start another foundation. Travel. Foster kids. I don't know what the future holds, Evan, but I know I want to face it with you. Even the boring parts? Especially the boring parts. The boring parts are what make life worth living." They went inside to their house, their life, their future. And if it wasn't perfect, if money was sometimes tight and work was sometimes stressful and Emma sometimes tested boundaries the way 7-year-olds did, it was real. It was theirs. It was enough. The years that followed brought changes and challenges. The Brooks Family Fund expanded to 5 cities, helping thousands of families annually. Emma grew up with 2 parents who loved her fiercely and showed up consistently. Madeline learned to cook, not well, but competently, and Evan learned to navigate nonprofit politics. They fostered 2 kids for 6 months, teenagers who needed stability, and found it in their chaotic, loving home. They bought a cabin in the mountains for weekend escapes. They fought and made up and learned each other's patterns and triggers. They built a life that looked nothing like what either had planned, but everything like what they needed. On a rainy Thursday in late October, 10 years after the accident, Evan was at the foundation office when Patricia buzzed his intercom. "Director Brooks, there's someone here to see you. Says it's personal. Send them in." The woman who entered was in her mid-30s, nervous, clutching a folder. "Mr. Brooks? I'm Sarah Mitchell. I received assistance from the Brooks Family Fund 8 years ago. You probably don't remember. You'd only been director for a few months." Evan did remember. Single mother, 3 kids, facing eviction after losing her job. The fund had covered 3 months' rent while she found new employment. "I remember you. How are you doing?" "I'm doing great. I found a good job, kept my apartment, got promoted twice. My kids are thriving." She opened the folder, pulled out a check. "I wanted to pay you back. Not because I have to. I know the fund doesn't require repayment, but because you gave me a chance when I had nothing. You believed in me. And now I want to help someone else the way you helped me." The check was for $5,000. Not a fortune, but significant for someone who'd been on the edge of homelessness 8 years ago. "Sarah, you don't have to do this. I know, but I want to. Because what you taught me is that help isn't charity, it's investment. You invested in me and my family. Now I'm investing in someone else's family. That's how this works, right? We lift each other up." Evan took the check, his throat tight. "This will help a lot of people." "Good. That's what it's for." She stood to leave, paused at the door. "You changed my life, Mr. Brooks. I just wanted you to know that. Whatever you're doing here, it matters, more than you probably realize." After she left, Evan sat alone in his office holding that check and thinking about circles. How one choice on a rainy night had rippled outward in ways he couldn't have predicted. How pulling Madeline from that car had led to a foundation that had helped thousands of families, including Sarah Mitchell, who was now helping others in turn. How kindness multiplied when you gave it space to grow. That evening, he told Madeline about Sarah's visit. They were in the kitchen making dinner together, Evan cooking, Madeline chopping vegetables with improved but still questionable knife skills, while Emma did homework at the table. "That's beautiful," Madeline said. "That's exactly what we hoped would happen. Creating a cycle of support instead of dependency." She called it investment, said we invested in her. We did. And she's paying dividends better than any stock portfolio. Madeline smiled. "You should write about this." Share her story. It's exactly the kind of thing donors need to hear. Maybe. I'm still not great at the public speaking thing. You're better than you think. Emma, what do you say? Should Daddy tell people about the foundation's work? Emma looked up from her math homework, a teenager now, all long limbs and attitude, but still their little girl. Dad's pretty good at the inspiration stuff, even if it embarrasses me sometimes. Everything I do embarrasses you lately, Evan said. That's my job. Teenager rules. They ate dinner together, the three of them plus Tommy and Anna, who'd stopped by with wine and gossip about neighborhood drama. Normal evening, nothing special, just life happening in the ordinary ways that made ordinary days extraordinary. Later, after everyone had left and Emma was in her room doing teenager things on her phone, Evan and Madeline sat on the porch like they had 1,000 times before. Do you ever think about that night? Madeline asked. The accident? Sometimes, usually when it rains. I think about it constantly, about how close I came to dying, about how you chose to stop when you didn't have to. She took his hand. About how one moment can change everything. Changed me too. Before that night, I was just surviving, working, raising Em, getting through days. I wasn't living. And now? Now I'm living, really living, because of you. No, because of you. You're the one who stopped. You're the one who took the risk. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I just got lucky that you did. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the street, the neighbors coming and going, the world turning the way it always did. Somewhere in the city, families were struggling. Somewhere, people needed help. Tomorrow, the foundation would be there for them. Tomorrow, the work would continue. But tonight, right now, Evan Brooks had everything he needed. A wife he loved, a daughter who was thriving, work that mattered, a life built from the rubble of that rainy night when he'd made a choice that seemed simple at the time but had changed everything. He'd pulled a stranger from fire and found family. He'd offered help without expectation and received love in return. He'd proven that ordinary people doing ordinary things could change the world, one choice, one moment, one act of kindness at a time. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The rain started around midnight, gentle and steady, and Evan lay in bed listening to it with Madeline curled beside him and thought about storms, about how they destroyed and renewed, about how the worst night of Madeline's life had become the catalyst for the best parts of both their lives, about how sometimes the things that nearly break us are the things that finally make us whole. He pulled her closer, breathed in the scent of her shampoo, and felt gratitude so profound it ached. For this moment, for this woman, for the choice he'd made on a flooded road when stopping seemed crazy and driving past seemed safer. He'd chosen to stop, and in stopping, he'd found everything he didn't know he'd been searching for. Somewhere in the house, Emma's phone chimed with a notification. Outside, the rain fell steadily, washing the world clean. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new families needing help, new choices to make. But tonight, Evan Brooks slept peacefully in his home with his family. A man who'd learned that the most powerful thing you could do wasn't pulling someone from fire. It was choosing to stay in their life once the flames were out. It was showing up, following through, building something that lasted. It was loving someone not despite the complications, but because of them. And that, more than any rescue or foundation or grand gesture, was the real story. The one worth telling. The one that mattered. The story of ordinary people choosing extraordinary love. The story of a family built from fire and rain and second chances. The story of home.